Hey, everybody. Welcome to Happy Tuesday. I hope your life is rocking and rolling. I hope the Salesforce job hunt thing is not making you want to kill yourself. It's pretty crazy out there, jobs period. But so glad you could join the Jerry Rig podcast today. So what if I told you to, take your job hunting, put it on pause for a few minutes, and consider another option? And we'll talk about why I love this option. We have a great guest today who's going to talk about it as well. And this concept is to, and I've actually preached this for a while, start your own LLC, which is way easier than you think. There's some hard parts to it. There's some easy parts to it. But we're going to talk about that today because our guest is Jason Washburn. Now, Jason is owner of the P3 Group. Let me get that right. He's based out of Seattle, Washington. He's a Salesforce guru, and he owns his own consultancy. And part of it, he was tired of that whole job hunting thing, so he just planned his own course. So stay tuned. We're going to be right back.
Yeah.
This is the Jerry Rigged Podcast, your no-nonsense knowledge base for business technology, marketing, and analytics. And now your host, Jerry Suhrstedt.
Welcome back to the Jerry Rigged Podcast. This is business marketing at its best. We're going to provide you, and this is kind of what we do on every podcast, is actionable insights and strategies to keep and elevate your business, and how to start a business sometimes is what we can talk about, or what we talk about. I'm the owner and founder of a company called Sumo Lab, Total Business Marketing. And today we're going to be diving into Salesforce professionals and how you can possibly continue looking for a job and at the same time run your own consultancy and then maybe make that transition or not. So today I'm excited to introduce a gentleman from Seattle. His name is Jason Washburn. He's the owner of the P3 Group, a successful Salesforce consultancy. And Jason has got a ton of experience in the Salesforce ecosystem and a very unique perspective on transforming from job seeker to business owner. Hey, Jason, how's it going?
Hey, Jerry. Thanks for being here.
So, Jason, you live in Seattle as well, correct?
That's true. Yeah, I just live in the South Town. Yeah, so closer to
not
Tacoma than Seattle for those who know the area, but yeah, close enough for government work.
Okay. So you're not right. That's right. You're in Renton? No.
Bonnie Lake is actually
Bonnie Lake,
our home base.
Right.
If you draw a straight line between Tacoma, the shipyard of Tacoma, and Mount Rainier, we're halfway in between.
Okay. So. Right. So I'm born and raised in Tacoma, Washington. So that's my old stomping grounds. I live in Chandler, Arizona now, where it doesn't rain quite as much. So, but Bonnie Lake, beautiful area, absolutely stunning. And if you've ever been to the Northwest and saw Mount Rainier on a nice clear day, you'd understand why people love to live there.
Yeah.
So, Jason, we're going to talk about starting your own Salesforce consultancy. We have a lot of folks that are out there job hunting across the board, especially in the IT space. And our Salesforce ecosystem has been hammered over the past year or two. And there's a lot of, especially admins, lots of people went out and got their admin certs. And now they're out there pounding the pavement. Of course, experience is always, a nice thing to have that real world, real life experience. But as some of you folks out there have reached job interview number 100 or job resume 100, 200, 300. I've heard of people that have actually pumped out like 1,000 resumes and applications. And some of you guys are not getting very many interviews. Some of you are getting a lot of interviews, but you can't get past that interview stage. What we're going to talk about today is kind of another way, kind of an option that will allow you to have some flexibility And potentially, if you started your own consultancy, you might pick up a couple of clients and you might not need a job. So, Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in the Salesforce ecosystem?
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of Salesforce professionals, definitely came into it as one abnormally born, for sure. I started out my professional life, I was a high school chemistry and physics teacher. So I had my BAs in chemistry, got a minor in physics, and now I'm a Salesforce professional. So yeah, it does make a ton of sense. But in 2008, I left the classroom, taught for a number of years, and started working in online education, which was in the K-12 space. That was kind of bleeding edge in 2007, 2008. And they were using this tool called Salesforce. And they said to me, well, it's an online, database that you can do pretty much anything with. You don't have to be a full stack developer. And I said, interesting. And so I started asking too many questions. And before I knew it, I was sucked into the ecosystem. So flash forward about 14 years, it's early 2020. And I was working for a Salesforce Consultancy, had been in the industry for almost all those 14 years at that point. And literally on my wife's birthday of all days, April of 2020, I had PTO, my phone started blowing up. And trying to put my senior partner at the consultancy. He said, hey, by the way, this pandemic thing is kind of getting serious. And we're going to furlough 10% of the company today. 315 people or something like that. And you're one of them. So your last paycheck, today's Tuesday. Your last paycheck is Friday. Really appreciate that. Thanks so much. Good luck. So that was my introduction to independency. And thankfully, my wife's an amazing person. Walked upstairs and told her what happened. We Googled what furloughed meant because we didn't know. And with like it's laid off with sparkles. And
right.
God bless her. She, in the first 24 hours, she got 48 job leads into our own Salesforce org that we had for years. And we worked those like rented mules. And by 31 days after being furloughed, I had 3 part-time clients, had incorporated P3 Group, and was making double the hours of what I was making at the SI and at twice the rate. So I had a 4x increase in 31 days. And so that's where P3 Group was born.
Nice. So I don't know if you experienced this, but anytime that I left the job work world and started my own business, I can't think of one time where I didn't say to myself after about 6 months, geez, I wish I would have did this a long time ago.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And then at the 8-month mark, you go, why did I do this? And then it kind of goes back and forth for a while.
Right.
But after about the first 1 year mark, you're kind of pot committed and you go, man, yeah, I don't ever want to go back. There's some good days and there's some tough days. But by your 1 year mark, if you're doing things right, you're at that point like, okay, there's some times in 2003 when things got really tough. And I looked at my wife and said, do I need to go back and go look for a regular job? And she says, Jason, you're going back to Babylon. There's no safety there. There's no security there. You know that. Like, why would you pursue that? You're doing fine. Stay the course.
Yeah, there really isn't. I mean,
yeah.
I remember growing up and being an entrepreneur and my mom going, why don't you just get a regular job? Yeah, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And, jobs were, if you got hired at Boeing and you kept your nose clean, you showed up for work and did your job, you could probably work at Boeing for 35, 40 years and then retire, right? But in 2024, it's a total crapshoot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because my dad retired probably 2 decades ago, and he and I chatted about that he was a union guy for half his career.
Yep.
No gold watch, no pension.
Oh, really?
Were gone for him. Yeah. And so there's no way, I was in college at that time. There's no hope for me to have a gold watch and a pension from someplace that I worked my whole career. Transparently, I've got 2 daughters. They're super young right now. They're 8 and 10, And my wife and I are coaching them to have their own business before they leave high school.
Wow.
And that way, if they want to do something different, they want to go to college, great. But pay your college tuition in cash with the money that you make out of your business.
Yeah.
And
Oh, totally.
Get that college degree if you want it. But don't do like I did and go into debt for it.
No.
Many of us did.
Yeah, I can't even imagine graduating from college. You're out there trying to find a job and can't find nothing. And then you got to make payments on this big old fat loan. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah, it's not easy. And I question the ROI on it anymore. Yeah. That's probably a different podcast for a different day.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, if you're on, for our listeners out there, if you're on LinkedIn right now and you got a question, my questions and comments is not really working on my platform here. So just post a question right on our stream page. Right there on LinkedIn, there's a stream page where you would have joined, and just pop a question in there and I'll see if I can see it and we'll answer some of your questions. Okay, let's talk about some more stuff. Let's dive into some primary steps for making this transition. All right, let me back up. So if you're job hunting and you're considering starting your own business, why is like forming an LLC or just kind of getting that rolling? Why is that a good option?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a couple things, just in full transparency, 2003 was probably the toughest year in the Salesforce ecosystem since Salesforce started back in '99. But like anything, that just means that there's challenges and opportunities both, right?
Yep.
The challenge now is you have to be much more focused in what you're doing and be a little more disciplined about what you're doing. To your point, and as you talked about earlier, there's lots of junior admins out there and some things you got to do there, and we'll talk about that today. But the opportunity is, especially if you're a switcher, even if you're coming from another career into the Salesforce ecosystem, don't forget that you've got a ton of knowledge there.
Yep.
Whatever you did beforehand. Even me as a former high school teacher, the training and the ability to teach people new skills and structure that has been a blessing to me and has been a blessing to my clients. Right. So don't forget whatever you did before this and bring that in. That makes a really good opportunity.
Yeah, nice.
And I really should say, before we go any farther, Jerry, there's one thing I want to call out for everybody just so we're all clear on it. There's two different things you can think of in this process. You can think of either starting your own Salesforce consultancy, like an agency, right? Becoming a solution implementation partner with Salesforce. And that's a big thing. And the other thing we could talk about, and I think really one thing I'll focus on today, is how do you start an independent Salesforce consulting business? A lot of folks call this being a solopreneur. I can't really say the word very well, but I know what it is. So we'll talk about being a Salesforce solopreneur today a lot. And it's also a really good gateway. If you do want to go to that agency thing, it's a good gateway to get there. And that's really transparent the pathway I followed. Is I started as a solopreneur, and here in April of 2024, we finally made the transition to a full agency.
Nice.
So we'll talk about that a lot today. So a little bit different here. We'll talk about agency versus solopreneur and how you do both.
Yeah, I mean, the corporate structure is the same. LLC is a great corporate structure because you can start a corporation, an official corporation, and then you can be taxed through the IRS as a C Corp, which you don't want to do unless you're doing like, $10 million a year. Or you can be taxed as an S Corp where all of the losses flow to you personally. But an LLC is kind of cool. Like, for instance, here in the state of Arizona, now I know Washington's different. If you're going to form an LLC in Washington, just to file the paperwork and create that entity is typically a couple $100, right? Arizona is $50. That's it. That's kind of cool. So here in Arizona, you can form an LLC for $50. You're going to have to file not really file, but at least create and generate, your official LLC guidelines and rules and regulations that internally you kind of live by, especially if you got a business partner. But if it's just you and your significant other, then things get a lot easier. So once you got the LLC and you give your LLC a name, and you got that identity, now in order to do work outside of being a W-2 employee, I mean, you can do almost anything. You can go and hustle your own clients. You can take a contract role as a 1099 or a straight contract, what they call a corp to corp, C to C. So essentially you do work, you send them an invoice, they pay the invoice, and that's how that works. So I always kind of looked at the concept in like 70, to me in my head, 70% of the equation is the same. If you work for a company and it's W-2, they kind of own you a little bit, they dictate everything, and they give you benefits and all that stuff. But if you can work for that same company as a contractor, corp to corp, and now they don't have very much control over you at all, although you want to keep them happy because they're your customer, you don't get any benefits, they're not taking taxes out, but you get a lot more flexibility. And here's something I love about having your own LLC. You go on LinkedIn and you start your own company page, and you create your own little website, your own logo, your own branding, and now you post that company on your job profile, your experience on LinkedIn, and you don't have to tell everybody that you own the company. You can just say, I work for it, and technically you do. So now as the owner of the company, you can dictate what your job title is and what you do. So if you're trying to make your experience, look good, that's another way to do it.
Yeah.
So what are the primary steps for making this transition, Jason? If somebody's going to get their own Salesforce consultancy going, you were talking about the crash, I want to say, in the talent in the ecosystem. And let's talk a little bit more about that crash and how that kind of affected your path.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of things, as we think about this conversation, some things that are better about going down that Salesforce solopreneur pathway, right? To your point, Jerry, getting started is easier. It's way easier. I tried to create a business back in 2006 and it did not go well.
Yep.
It was hard and it failed pretty badly.
In 2006?
But, starting.
Yeah. That was a bad time to do anything.
But then again, starting in 2020, it's gotten easier. And transparently, even since then, it's gotten easier yet, which is nice. So going into this kind of model that you're talking about, to your point, it's easier to do, and we'll talk about some of the pieces of it. One of the benefits of being a solopreneur as opposed to being a W-2 employee or even kind of starting your own agency and really kind of trying to get, you actually do more Salesforce hands-on keyboard work, right? As I'm trying to grow P3 Group into a full agency, there are a lot of days I just log into an org than ours. I log into our org and I do business work. I'm actually doing the work that I love doing, which is building Salesforce orgs. So the solopreneur thing, you stay focused on that. That's your job every day. And to your point, there's a wonderful opportunity in that. To your point, when you're a W-2, you have, on Warren Buffett's idea, you have one income thread. And there's risk there. And we don't talk about that a lot, right? We talk about a lot in the old days. Yeah, I'm going to work W-2. I'm going to work my whole career. To your point, if I do a good job, my boss is going to reward me. I'm going to get my 9% per year increase.
Right.
And I won't lose my job.
Right.
Right. We won't get into it today, but I don't think that world exists anymore.
No, I don't think so.
Post-pandemic, we've probably proved it. I think we're all feeling it. So there's a fantastic book I encourage anybody to read. It changed my life. I read it back in I want to say 2005, 2010, somewhere around there. But it's a book by a gentleman named Nassim Nicholas Taleb. The book's called Anti-Fragile, Things That Gain from Disorder. I won't go to a full book review. It's a fantastic book. But the idea that he has around optionality is life-changing for me. The idea that, okay, if I'm running my own LLC and I can take a full-time job, right? Corp to corp. I can take a contract job that is 6 months long and they want me for 40 hours a week.
Yep.
Great. I can take 2 part-time jobs.
Yep.
Corp to corp. One's 20 hours a week, or one's 18 hours a week, and one is 22 hours a week. Fantastic. I'm still at 40. I'm great. And if that situation goes bad, because it happens sometimes if you're doing this thing, the client pulls back and says, well, I'm not going any farther. Or the SI does something nefarious and they go, hey, we're done. We're going to, take this to somebody else, or we're taking it offshore because it's cheaper or something like that. So many different things happen. You still have another income stream left.
Hey, Jason.
Right. If you're W-2 and that company goes belly up, you have no income stream.
Hey, Jason.
And you will usually get maybe 2 weeks notice.
And then what I'm going to talk about too is, folks, we're not saying that just because you formed an LLC, you should quit your job. Do both. I spent 5 years one time at a job, and I owned an LLC and a company at the same time. And if there were side projects that came in, I would do that on the weekend. So, it's not an either or thing. They're not mutually exclusive. You can own an LLC, own your own consultancy, take, a project that comes through. It's only 5 hours a week. And while you're doing a full-time job, that's assuming that your job doesn't have an issue with it. Obviously, if you got a really good paying job and it's a great company to work for, you want to prioritize that. But these days with people getting laid off, people getting fired, it's nice to have that backup. If you're not working a W-2 job, what you could do is with your own LLC is you can essentially, like Jason was talking about, you can have 3 clients and all 3 clients are giving you 5 to 10 hours a week. And now one client, decides not to work with you anymore. You still got 2 other clients, so you're not completely destitute. Or in a job, when they lay you off, you're done. That's it. They might give you 2 weeks of severance if they're really nice, and then you can always jump on unemployment, which is usually about 1/10 of what you typically make. So, if any of you guys out there, Jason's going to talk to her. If you still hear an echo, let us know. Otherwise, if he's sounding good, let us know as well. That'd be cool. Okay. LLC, not that hard to set up. You can do it. Give it a name. Don't use LLC in your branding. That's a marketing boo-boo. You don't want to do that. If your LLC is called ABC LLC, you don't want to brand yourself as ABC LLC. You want to brand yourself as ABC. And keep in mind that whatever you call your LLC, you can come up with a doing business as name, anything. You could be ABC LLC doing business as Bob's Salesforce Consultancy. So that's something to keep in mind. Oh, let's see.
You can change that as it goes along too.
Yeah. Well, and you can add. People don't realize this. When you have a corporation or LLC, it does business. And it can do business. You could have 10, 15, 20 DBAs doing business as, Bob's landscaping service, Bob's snow cone business, Bob's Salesforce Consultancy. And you can give them all different names. So you get a ton of flexibility. So this old adage about, and I heard a politician say this a few years ago, a corporation is actually, it's its own person, which I kind of sort of disagree at a certain level, but we'll just go with it. That's the legal basis for a corporation or an LLC. It's its own entity. So you might own it and not work for the LLC as an employee. You might own it and work for it. So whenever you are, like, for instance, let's say you're in a job interview and they want to know you got experience. Well, I own a company called Sumo Lab. It's a marketing agency. I've had job interviews, in the past year for a job that came along, and they asked me, like, how long have you worked for Sumo Lab? Oh, like a year and a half. And so what do you do for them? Oh, I'm a marketing manager and this and this and that. Never once did I bring up that I owned it, and never once did they ask. So, don't ask, don't tell.
That's sometimes better too, given the fact that I've had people get squirrely where they say, "Oh, you started your own business." Like, yeah, I had to. Sun Tzu's concept of death ground is either that or try and find a way to feed my family. So, didn't have a lot of options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that goes well.
If you're trying to feed your family, there's a part of me that kind of says anything goes. feeding your wife and kids.
Exactly.
Or if you're a single mom and you got to feed the kids, I mean, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Say what you got to say.
Yeah.
Maneuver how you got to maneuver to make that happen. That doesn't hurt my feelings at all. So somebody was asking, what level of knowledge do you need to begin freelancing? Can you accept a job and figure out how to complete tasks as you go? I'm interested in freelancing as a business. Anyway, so what do you think, Jason?
I think a couple things. I think it's a great question. A couple of things. Number one, when I first incorporated, it was tough. It was more difficult than it is now. You can go wherever state you live in, you go to the Secretary of State usually, and they've got website and tools to manage it. There's actually really companies now that help you get those LLCs started and managed. So Taylor Brands, Zen Business are both websites that'll go, hey, type in your ideas, pay the fee, and not only will they help you create that LLC, but also maintain it and update all the paperwork with the state, which is huge. That's a huge blessing. The second big thing, I can't say this seriously enough, create a separate checking and savings account for your business. Go to whatever bank you use. I went to the bank I've been with for 25 years as just a consumer, opened a business account with them. P3 Group's cash flow is separate from Jason Washburn's cash flow, and it needs to be that way.
And it's pretty much required. I mean, you have to. You don't have a choice, because otherwise, at the end of the year,
you will get audited by the IRS if you don't.
Oh, and you will be screwed.
It's not fun.
Yeah, it is not fun. On that, everything has to stay separate, especially with the LLC. Everything has to be separate.
Yeah.
Separate business. Yeah. It's its own entity. You can own it and work for it. You can just own it and have other people working for it, but it's a completely separate entity from you, your life, and your family.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And the third thing I would say with that too, especially if you're looking at your own freelancing business, like the person asked, do yourself a favor. Go to Gusto or whoever you're using for your financial management and set yourself up as a W-2 employee of your own corporation. Right. So the LLC is there. If you use something like Gusto, it's like $60 a month or something like that.
Yeah. What is Gusto?
For you to run payroll for yourself.
And that's what Gusto does?
Yeah. Gusto is basically HR payroll management. So the way we've gotten it set up, and it works fantastically, P3 Group takes in revenue. Every 2 weeks, P3 Group uses Gusto to run a payroll for Jason Washburn. Taxes are deducted. It makes April in the United States much easier. Tax time for the United States. You don't have to worry about holding back or a special savings account or anything like that. Gusto pays all of your taxes and everything like that as far as HR taxes.
Yep.
To the state. All is just taken care of. And you don't have to worry about it.
So back to this guy's question, and this is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And I say this because sometimes it comes down to your level of comfortability. So he says, what level of knowledge do you need to become, to get into freelancing? It's up to you, really. Now, I historically have gone out a little bit over my skis at times. A project comes in, these guys got a budget of $5,000, let's say. I got to pay rent on the first. I'm doing this project. I'm going to BS my way through it. And yes, I have signed projects, jumped on the internet, learned a couple of things. I knew the basics. I knew the fundamentals, and just kind of pushed that envelope, did the project. The customer was happy, and I learned some things. Did I know 110% of every nook and cranny that they needed? No. Did I know 75, 80% of it? Yes. So I would say dive in it. The worst that could happen is that you screw up. I mean, that's just part of life. Yeah. And you can always apologize. And if you show a willingness to do a good job, take care of them, communicate, give them good customer service, I think you can really push that envelope quite a bit. And so in being a business analyst, just deep dive into it. Just pound it. Just go through every, get on the IIBA, look at Salesforce business analyst documentation on Trailhead, go through all that stuff, and you'll know 70-80% of what you need to know. And then once you get into a project, because every project's different, and you can be a business analyst for 15, 20 years and still not fully understand what your next client is going to need. So that's something to keep.
And I would think there's two really important things for me there. Number one, in education, we talk about the zone of proximal development, right? It's just enough of a challenge that it pushes you forward, but not so much of a challenge you fall flat on your face and quit. So in that space, if you're accepting an offer or you're looking at a role, look for that what they call ZPD, right? You look at I may not know everything, but I know enough to bring value, and I will learn the rest, right?
So this next guy says, how do you bill out discovery? I've lost time not billing to be able to quote companies to be able to understand the project and accurately quote. Now, I will say, at least on my side, and Jason will probably be able to weigh in here, I don't, that first meeting, kind of understanding who they are, what they need and all that, I don't bill for that. I don't think you can bill for it, but I don't know. I guess if you're dealing with a big company and you send them a contract and they sign the contract first, but I can't imagine anybody's going to sign a contract before discovery. What do you think, Jason?
There's a couple different ways to do that. So I think there are certain parts that are part of the sales discovery process that you should understand the problem they're trying to solve. Right? What problem are they trying to solve? Can I solve it for them? That kind of matchmaking part of it. Totally fine to do that inside a sales process. It shouldn't take a ton of time. And I would say you don't bill for that. But in software development, I've gotten used to using what I call the spaghetti on the wall model. I've both as a W-2 employee or as a consultant, when I've walked into a room full of business stakeholders and they start explaining their problem to me, and 15 minutes in, they go, well, fantastic, Jason, how long will it take to get this into production?
Right.
And you're like 15 minutes in. And so I literally have told them, I said, spaghetti on a wall. And they look at me with a confused look, and I said, I could have a bowl full of spaghetti on this desk right now, grab a handful and throw it against that wall over there and count the strands that stuck. And that would be as accurate a message as I could give you.
Yes. Well, you have that initial conversation.
As a professional, I think is important. Look, okay, paid discoveries are valuable and they're worth something to a business.
Yes.
And it's not wrong to say, we're going to sign, we know this is going to be a good fit. We've signed the contract, and now let's get into understanding what you need to have built, especially as a sales professional. That will take
right.
Paid discoveries. We've done multiple paid discoveries, 6 to 8 weeks, where the product is the discovery itself and the user stories and the acceptance criteria and that stuff.
Yes.
And that's okay.
So there's kind of that sales discovery to sell them on working with you, right?
Yep.
Getting their budget, what are their needs? Generally speaking, are they doing a migration from HubSpot to Pardot or, whatever the case may be? And then once you've kind of sold them on that and gave them a quote and they said, hey, that quote works good. That timeline looks good. You guys pretty much incorporated everything that we need. And then you signed the contract. Now you get into like this real hardcore discovery where you're going to find out like all the nuts and bolts. And now you're going to play business analyst a little bit and get some requirements for the users and the stakeholders. So I guess I'm assuming that you're talking about the pre-contract discovery, which I don't bill for. But once you sign a contract, any discovery after that, you're billing hourly or it's part of the, fixed price.
And I will say too, especially in the Salesforce ecosystem, one thing you have to watch out for is people will want you to do a project. And they'll say, hey, do this project to prove to us that you know what you're doing.
Right.
And then I've seen multiple times where the clients have taken that work product that has inherent value to the point of the person asking about business analyst.
Yep.
Business analyst is a skill set. It is a value to a business. It is not innate.
Right.
Trust me, I've seen enough BAs in my life, people that thought they were BAs that weren't. And so don't, in the interview process, allow them to say to you, well, we're going to have you do a whole bunch of free work for us and then skate, because that happens. way too much, way more than it should. People complain a lot about employees or candidates ghosting them, but businesses do the opposite too, where the business actually takes your intellectual property and your work product, and then never gives you a job afterwards. So be careful of that piece as well.
Well, make sure in your quotes that you're putting, once the work product is done, who owns it? Because from a copyright standpoint, if Jason hires me to do a photo shoot of his family, and I create that photography, that's my art. I own that 100%. And a lot of photographers or graphic designers or whatever, they will license their work. If you're a real high-end graphic designer, you typically always retain ownership of everything you ever create. And then you license it to the client. The client says, I want to use this artwork in Seattle, Washington only. Then maybe they get one price. I want to use this artwork nationwide and on national TV during the Super Bowl. Well, that has a way different price, and typically it has a timeline. But if the client out front says, I want to own all copyright ownership of this work product when it's complete, you can put that right in your invoice or your quote and say, all work product copyright ownership will be transferred from the creator to the client, and then it's done.
Yeah.
So anyway, usually it's not a huge deal in smaller businesses when you're doing Salesforce work, but when you're in photography or graphic design or web design, then that can become an issue.
Absolutely.
On Salesforce, so back to what you were saying about doing work and not getting paid, there's a whole bunch of little tricks of the trade to make sure that you protect yourself, but still not come across like a jerk. And then the client's like, I don't really like this guy, and they don't want to work with you.
And I'm a firm believer, if you have good professional boundaries, and then expect the company to do likewise.
Yes.
Right? You're like, there's virtue in that. I think for too long in the United States, we've had this model that employers are everything and employees are exchangeable.
Yeah.
And you're like, if you're doing quality work, you're doing quality work, and you're trying to constantly grow and do better quality work, don't tell yourself that it's not worth nothing. Right.
Right.
Value to that. And it should be appropriate. It should be a mutually beneficial relationship. It shouldn't be, let's just say, unhealthy relationship.
Right. Absolutely. So Jason, let's talk real quick as we're heading down the home stretch here. Can you share some, like a success story that you've had with a client where, kind of like when you first started talking, how that rolled out, did it pay well? Did you lose your shorts? What happened?
Yeah. I will say one thing too, in the category of mutually beneficial situations, and how do you make this whole solopreneur thing successful? Probably the single biggest advice to have protections and respect for yourself, other than things we talked about so far, setting up your account, those kind of things. As fast as humanly possible, get to 3 to 6 months of your combined business burn and your personal burn for finances, save back somewhere, right? So if your household expenses are $5,000 a month, your mortgage, your food, everything else, right, is all $5,000 a month, and your business expenses are $1,000 a month for your licenses and your software and all that jazz, $6,000 total. 6 times 3 is still 18, right? As fast as humanly possible, you get $18K back in savings. Because what that does for you is it gives you a cushion. If a client disappears on you, if a client, you do a much work for them and they don't pay you, which happens sometimes, sadly.
Oh, yeah.
You can absorb those losses a little bit without wondering, God, how am I going to pay mortgage? Which is stressful. And it will chase you out of this life if you're not careful with it, right?
Well, you do a better job if you're relaxed and you're at ease, and the home front's taken care of, and your wife's happy, and the kids are fed. You can do a better job for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you're not under that stress. You know that you can survive a few things here and there. You can be okay taking 20 hours a week for a month or two until you find the next 20-hour week thing to add on to it. It takes the stress level down from like a 12
Yep.
down to like 4.
Yes.
And it's much more enjoyable at that point.
Yes, it is.
But to your point about a good example, yeah, we've been really blessed in the fact that a couple of different clients we've worked with. When I was doing the solopreneur thing, I was doing a lot of subcontracting. So working underneath other consulting groups, white labeling. P3 group didn't get mentioned.
Right.
It was XYZ Corp, and they gave me an email, and literally had people tell them, "Don't tell the client we hired you last week."
Right.
Which was interesting. But to your point, the client didn't ask, and I didn't volunteer.
Right.
But I think one of the things that's come out of that that's been a huge compliment, is when you say, I've worked with some clients in that space where I was subcontracting, there were non-disclosure agreements that had a finite period where you say, okay, I can't work with ABC Corp for 18 months after the contract's over, which is totally appropriate. You shouldn't be out there stealing somebody's customer. But the client actually came to me, 2 different clients on 2 different occasions came to me literally the day after that contract expired.
Oh, really?
And said, "Hey, Jason, we really appreciate working with you. You did a fantastic job for us. You were heads and shoulders above everybody else we worked with. I see that you're on LinkedIn and you're doing the thing. But can we work together again?" To me, that's about as high professional praise as you get when the clients come find you and say, "Hey, I couldn't until yesterday talk to you, but now I want to talk to you today." Yeah. So that to me has been a success. Like when that happens, you go, you double check the contract to make sure you're okay and make sure you're not doing step on anybody's toes or doing anything unethical.
Yes.
So you sit there and go, I enjoyed working with you too. I'll be back and working with you again. And you work direct.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's cool stuff when they want to work with you like that. And that just shows you like, you're good at what you do and you take care of your people. And, so we got someone asking, I might have missed it. Why do you guys push an LLC over a simple business license required in my city and working as a contractor under it? And here's what I will say. Ultimately, you need to go talk to a CPA and how all of this, your business entity is structured, how that affects your taxes. And then you need to talk to an attorney to see how your business structure affects your liability. So with a simple business license, yes, you can be a, oh my gosh, what's the term if you don't have a corporation?
You're a contractor, yeah.
No, there's a sole proprietor. There's only like 3 or 4 different types of business structures. Sole proprietor, you are the business. You go and get a business license and it says Jerry Suhrstedt is doing business as Jerry Suhrstedt or Jerry's Salesforce Consultancy. There's no protections. All the plus all the gains and all the liabilities of the business lands on you personally. So if you have a house and you have some money in the bank and one of your customers sues you, they're going to take what you own, you and your family own. With an LLC, you're creating a separate entity that is not you. You are not the business. You own the business. You're a manager of the business and you work for the business. And actually the IRS requires that within like a year or so, you set yourself up as an employee because they want to collect their employment taxes. So you have to be an employee.
Well, and it makes it easier too.
It does. It separates everything out. And then you can write off like so much stuff. But that LLC creates this wall so that now if you screw up, they can sue the LLC for everything it has, but they can't touch your personal stuff. And as long as you kept everything separate, then you got a great case. It should have go to court, say, LLC, it went bankrupt, sorry, but they can't touch your house. They can't touch your personal finances, none of that stuff. So that's why.
And to that point too, Jerry, there's some fantastic programs out there now. I use Next personally, Next Insurance, but there's tons of great business insurance out there, especially if you're a consultant. It's good to have, and some contracts will require you to have, if you work to corp, $1 to $2 million in insurance. And so that's another good way to do it. Once you form that LLC can get insurance, business insurance.
Yes.
And protect even the business assets.
Well, and some of the clients that you work for, they will require that you have liability insurance, and they will require that you go to your insurance carrier and add them as an additional insured. There are some online insurance companies that offer liability insurance. I'm trying to think of the one that I use, but it took me like 15 minutes. It was like $100, and you got liability insurance, and they give you a rider, and everything's done.
Yeah.
So
if folks are interested, I can provide some of the links to some of the resources we use for these different things we talked about in the call today. And definitely let you guys know.
Yeah, you can just post it on the comment thread on the LinkedIn event. You could do that. Somebody posted here 1099. I guess I'm not sure why they posted 1099. I'm assuming they maybe have a question, but 1099 is just something that a company, when they hire you, that's their way of kind of sending you a W-2 form at the end of the year. But because you're not an employee, they're going to send you a 1099. Now, if you own your own corporation, now I've heard this back and forth a bajillion times from different accountants, but they don't have to send you a 1099 if you're a corporation. If you're not a corporation, you're just Bob Smith or Susie Jones, then they're going to send you a 1099 NEC, which is non-employee compensation. But yeah, you're going to get that, and you got to follow with your taxes.
Yeah, and again, the difference between and I'm no tax expert, so don't take this the wrong way, but
right,
just doing for me operation between 1099 and corp to corp is if they're paying the corporation and then the corporation is paying me a salary.
Yes,
we have our setup.
Yes.
Then my personal taxes are taken care of. They're calculated every year. They're withheld properly.
Yes.
State unemployment's paid. Labor and Industries is paid. All that stuff. Like, so you can like Gusto, all that stuff's taken care of. Transparently, I did it wrong in 2006, and I had I think it was like a $7,000 or $8,000 bill from the IRS that I got to pay off over a couple of years. It was a great party.
Yeah, nice.
Don't do it that way. Right? Learn from my bad mistakes. Do not do it that way.
And just a disclaimer. Neither Jason nor myself are attorneys. We're not CPAs. We're not giving you advice. All we're doing is explaining what we have experienced. Yes. I've been in the business world for 25 years. So, I know about 70% of it, and the other 30% is rules that are constantly changing. That one LinkedIn user said, why do you guys push LLC over a simple business license and working as a contractor under it? Well, you're not a contractor under your own LLC. You're setting yourself up as an employee, meaning like if you got QuickBooks, you're going to look at it and go, okay, I'm making, let's say $5,000 a month in revenue in my LLC because I got one client, pays me $5,000 a month. I'm going to pay myself $4,000 a month as an employee, and your gross wages are going to be $4,000, and you're going to take out taxes just like a regular run-of-the-mill W-2 employee, and then you're going to have to, your LLC's got to pay its share of taxes, and you got to pay your share of taxes. But if you hire a bookkeeper, they'll help you manage all that, or if you use that company that Jason was talking about, if you could post that on there as well. What was that called? Gusto?
Yeah, Gusto. Yeah, I'm actually writing up a list right now of the tools we use.
Okay, cool. And then every state has a different methodology or fees that they charge for forming an LLC. A great place to form an LLC also is LegalZoom. You can set it all up, get all your paperwork ready, and I think it's like really, really cheap, to be honest. I think it's like, I want to say it's free. Like they use it as
most places for your state licensing, all that jazz are under $250.
No, I just mean not the filing fees, but the actual legal side of it. So I'm on LegalZoom now, and on LegalZoom, they have a limited liability company. Form your LLC with confidence. You have a basic plan for forming an LLC, which is zero money. And then they got a professional one for $250 and then a premium one for $300. I don't know the difference between the two, but check it out. LegalZoom.com. Great way to go. Now, most of your states, they kind of sort of don't really care about your internal corporate documentation. You go to them, you fill out a form, you pay them their money, and you're done. And as far as the state's concerned, you have an LLC. Now, Washington, just because I'm from there, you also have to set up a business license, which is tied in with the Washington State Department of Revenue, because they want to make sure that they get their B&O taxes.
Yes. And things like unemployment insurance and things like that as well also get tied into that.
So, you know what I learned, Jason? Washington State is one of only about 4 or 5 states in the United States that charge businesses a B&O tax. Now, they don't have an income tax. Now, Arizona does not charge B&O taxes, business and occupation taxes, but they do have a corporate income tax. So I think ultimately it's like, 2, 3, 4, 5% or something. Either way, you're paying money to the state, but it's just how they kind of categorize it, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. We're in the home stretch. So Jason has been killing it with P3. So it's something you should consider. Gives you lots of flexibility. Have your own LLC. You can hire yourself. You can not hire yourself. You can take contracts. You can take a W-2 job. You can do all that stuff all at the same time while you're looking for a job. And that's why I like it. Plus, if you're trying to make yourself look extra cool on your LinkedIn profile and your resume, you can just show yourself as an employee for the company. You don't have to bring up that you own it. Last year, I had over 80 job interviews. I think 3 of them asked me if Sumo Lab was my company. Nobody else asked, and I didn't bring it up. So just something to keep in mind.
It's about what you pitch it as, too. I think, to your point, most folks don't even ask. But the point of pitching the idea that I'm getting organized with how I run my career. I'm trying to be forward thinking and constantly growing. I think those are good things.
Yes.
And even if you're applying for a W-2 role and you're with the full intention of saying, well, I'm going to put my LLC on the side for however long I'm at this company.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
You think about it as a value, then the customer will see it as a value. If you think of it as a detriment, then the customer probably will see it as a detriment. Okay? So it depends on how you feel about it and how you project that in your interview. It's like, yeah, I'm constantly growing. I've got different ways of doing this business. If you want to engage that way, you engage that way. One of the things too, I'll put a link up there. One of the things with Gusto is it also opens you up to the ability to give yourself insurance and a 401k, which to me is kind of that last little piece of the difference between the W-2 world and this world.
Yes.
Can I have health insurance for my family?
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
In the United States, it's kind of tied together, right? But yeah, so I think if you're in that space and you're already giving yourself insurance and you go to negotiate a W-2 contract, you go, hey, I can fully unencumbered. I don't need your guys' insurance. I don't, I got my own 401k going. That's great.
Yep.
It actually reduces your overall cost or encumbrance to that business. It actually makes you more attractive or can get you a better salary depending on how you negotiate.
So look on my profile here. There's my LinkedIn profile. If you go down to experience, remember, folks, this section is called experience. It's not called a chronological list of every job you ever had. It's called experience. You can get experience working for your dad. You can get experience of volunteering. You can get experience. I always encourage people over here underneath the title in the company. If you're volunteering for someone in the Salesforce and doing some Salesforce work, don't put volunteer. Don't water down your experience. If you were a admin for a local food bank and you're volunteering your time, just put, I was a Salesforce admin for blah, blah, blah. End of discussion. You notice here, Sumo Lab. Yes, I own Sumo Lab. That is my company, but I just got marketing manager. That's it. I don't have proprietor, president, CEO, founder, none of that stuff. So all of my experience could be a company I own, could be a company I work for, could be a contract that I had. It's all experience. So just remember that and don't I see a lot of these experience sections where it says, one girl, I was helping her out on her profile, and it said, my husband and I owned a car rental company, and it just really sucked all of the gravitas. And I said, well, who was managing the CRM? Well, I was. Who implemented the CRM? Well, I did. Okay, you're a CRM manager. End of discussion. Nobody has to know that you owned the business. Nobody has to know that you and your husband started it. None of that is relevant to experience.
Yeah.
So something to keep in mind. Anything else you want to add here, Jason, before we head out?
No, I appreciate the conversation. Yeah, I hope it helps folks. Transparently, I really think that the world is changing. And I look forward to more folks kind of joining this lifestyle. I've seen a lot of things in the last 4 or 5 years, especially with folks really focusing not so much on climbing corporate ladders, but just being financially successful and enjoying their life. And I think this is a great pathway to do that. I mean, I'm living proof. We have videos of my youngest daughter when I was still working my corporate life and literally commuting 3 hours a day.
Oh my goodness.
She was about 2. And she's laying on the front room floor waiting for me to come.
Wow.
Or a video that my wife sent with my youngest. She was sick one day and she was crying because I was at work. This wall might deceive people, but this is my home office. I work from home every day. I get to make lunch for my family on my lunch break. Food's better. The coworkers are better. And now that I'm growing our team, I got to choose 2 fantastic gentlemen that I work with now. And, our Scrum calls are some of the best calls we have every day. So it's a worthwhile endeavor. It gives you a way to get your life back. You're not beholden to just one company that's going to kind of try to say, oh, no, you got to come back to the office, take time away from your family. And it's really a rough choice. You decide to have kids there, buddy.
Yeah.
They'll be fine with that.
Shame on you for not putting the company first.
Don't live that life. Enjoy your life. Be good at what you do. Do good work. And this is a great pathway to get there.
There you go. Well, thank you, Jason. We really appreciate you coming in today as our host, talking to us about how to start your own Salesforce consultancy, all the ins and outs and the benefits. Of course, not everything is a rosy picture. Not everything is, rainbows and unicorns. But I love it because it gives you lots of flexibility. And so if any of you out there got questions, feel free to ping us on LinkedIn, either myself or Jason, and we'll answer some quick questions. If you want to dive in deeper, you probably have to set an appointment, which may or may not cost you money. So keep that in mind. You might go to the P3 Group website, check it out. And then you can steal some, go to my website, sumolab.co, steal some ideas. We're all down for that. Everybody's stealing ideas from everybody.
I think we're p3group.us. There is one, p3group.com is a company over in Germany. There's a whole different line of work.
Oh, okay. p3group.us.
US.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for hanging out with us. We'll have some more podcasts coming up here 1 week from today. And I forget what we're talking about. I gotta look at that. But we have Stephanie Majors, who is also an influencer on LinkedIn, is going to talk to us about some really, really cool stuff. Thanks, everybody.
The Jerry Rigged Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or Google. Business technology for CEOs, managers, and business owners. We're here to deliver insights and strategies without the fluff. This is the Jerry Rigged Podcast.